Buongiorno, buon pomeriggio, and buona seria Lazio world. Welcome to our instant reaction pod. Consider this a little extra time on top of the Lazio Genoa match. I'm your host, Sean McIntosh, joined as always by Caleb Adams. Caleb, not a great start to this podcast in that our first two instant reactions are on the heels of two very, very disappointing losses to start this campaign. I'll be honest. I tried to look it up, but the beauty of this podcast is that it's instant reaction. So we're playing off of our gut. I wanted to, because I was really curious to know, and maybe somebody can drop it in the comments. But when the last time Lazio started a campaign with two defeats was, I can't recall. Certainly when you're starting the season against Lecce and Genoa, and you're expecting something, and obviously for us, it's nothing short of disappointing, particularly given a lot of the excitement that we had going into this season. And I'll continue to say it's still super early, but this one, started off really really rough. We're talking a 16-minute goal with Retegui scoring his first Serie A goal, and does so by just being the first to react to a ball. Nice little header, easy for him to put away, but Provedel maybe could have done a little bit better. And for a lot of that first half, Lazio was a team that seemed to be asleep. But let's start off, Caleb, by telling me how you would describe this match in 3 words or less.
Not good enough. Yeah, I mean, there were improvements from last game, but anything would have been quite an improvement from last game. So it's tough to really focus on that as being a positive because the floor was quite low after last game. Yes, it's an improved performance. Yes, we actually were able to connect passes this game at times, but just not good enough. I mean, this is a team. This is a team that has no business beating us. Period. No business. And we have this tough road stretch. We have some tough matchups coming up soon. These first 2 games are important to at least get 4 points out of it. At least should be 6, but yeah, those are my 3 words.
Yeah, for me, it's still in preseason, because you mentioned it last time. It certainly seems to be the case this week. And we'll talk about it. Obviously, there were some improvements and things that we can hang our hat on, but when we looked at particularly the first 35 or 40 minutes, this team was asleep. And nobody was playing particularly well. Last week I could probably point to a little bit more what the opposition was doing tactically. I mean, this one, there was no energy at all. And honestly, I didn't feel like this team woke up until the second VAR check. And for me,
Are
that
you
was the
talking about the
moment.
one on Zaccagni?
Yeah,
Okay.
but the 43rd minute, Zaccagni goes down, and obviously that penalty was not given. And that's when I saw us wake up, and we spent about the next 10 minutes with some opportunities knocking on the door. I think that spell to close out that first half was our best of the match.
Yeah.
What'd you think?
No, I agree. I had on my notes that we woke up around like the 35th, 40th minute. That's kind of where I saw us sort of kick it to the next gear. And it looked promising going into the half. I was like, oh man, if we keep this up, there's no way we don't at least come out of this with a draw. That goal is coming.
Yeah, I thought for sure the goal was going to come before the half, because we had opportunities, corner kick after corner kick. I mean, it started to look a little bit like the team we expected.
Yeah. It was looking really promising, and I will say another way you could describe this game in 3 words is shots on target, which we had 2 of. out of 14 total shots, and through not, I mean, we pretty much had the ball for a good what 70 minutes of the game. It kind of felt like, give or take, and we had a lot of possession, had a lot of passing, but 2 shots on Genoa. They outshot us on target. This is the same team that's had 10 men back for almost the majority of the game.
Yeah, that possession was 70%, over 70% to Lazio, 29.7% to Genoa, and absolutely astounding because to your point, Genoa outshot us in terms of getting it on frame,
Yes.
but total shot attempts 16 by Lazio to Genoa's 5.
Mhm.
Absolutely incredible. Corners, 15 Lazio corners to Genoa's 1.
Yeah.
Um, that obviously for us, we can look at potentially as an improvement when it comes to possessing the ball and maybe creating opportunities or finding shots. But finding more quality and getting them on frame is going to be important. Just rewinding a bit, Caleb, what did you think? Because we went to VAR twice, both in the first
Yeah.
half. What were your thoughts on both of those calls? Were they the right calls, or were they the wrong calls?
Both of them for me were calls that I think could have gone either way. Like I would understand the sentiment of not calling them, but I also understand on the other end how you could call them. They weren't for me. They weren't calls where I was like furious. I was like, how is that? Like it wasn't like the Juve non-call earlier today, right? It wasn't that blatant, but it a little bit of luck and we get those calls. But I'm not
Yeah,
necessarily.
I thought the first one would have been a
Yeah,
soft penalty to
yeah,
give.
same.
Cheeto is good about making something out of
Yeah,
nothing, but I thought that second one should have been given, which obviously would have changed the match. Something else I thought was really interesting, and it seemed to play more of a factor in the first half. I thought the pitch was really poor. It seemed like it was overwatered
yeah.
to the point of affecting. You could see when they were making their passes, you could see the water, but I thought a lot of players had a particularly poor touch to the ball. Guys like Kamada, who typically have a great touch, was fumbling the ball. Cheeto had a couple really poor touches inside of the box. Zaccagni as well. So I thought that affected. It was really odd to see. I don't know if there was torrential downpours, but obviously it wasn't raining during the match, so that was really odd to see.
Yeah, no, even the commentator was mentioning it. They were pouring more water on at halftime, and there were puddles. I mean, throughout the pitch, and I was a bit confused.
Yeah,
And
really
there were
poor.
times, especially in the midfield, I saw in the first half, I saw Kamada try and do this kind of quick 1-2 touch. The ball just was stuck. Like he tried doing this one kind of quick double touch to beat a guy, and the ball was just stuck.
Which, as the home team, again, we were playing in Stadio Olimpico, is absolutely insane given our style of play, the necessity to play quick 1-2 passes.
I
I don't
understand.
know who got the call to water the pitch that much, but
Well, I understand. I understand wetting the pitch more for a team like us that likes to
for
play
for
the slick
slick,
play.
right? But it was
But yeah,
it was
when you have
soggy.
puddles, that definitely plays in Genoa's favor. But pitch
Yep.
aside, no excuses. That was just it wasn't good enough. And um,
Where did it all go wrong for you?
final third, right? Final third and set pieces for me, especially set pieces. My goodness, I don't. We had. I don't know. We would. So it looked like our set piece tactic was to our players were grouped and they would run to a specific area, all of them grouped together to that one area. But either because of miscommunication or poor delivery from Alberto, it would just fall into like a group of Genoa players instead. And it seemed like I don't I don't know if that comes down to delivery. I don't know if that's just a set piece sort of tactic that we had. Point is, I thought we were pretty wasteful with that. And of course, on the final third end of things, we got to give credit to Genoa as well. I mean, they played their hearts out. The Romanian center back had himself maybe the best game of his life because he was getting to everything, and so credit to them for that. But yeah, for me, final third and set pieces where the game fell apart.
Yeah, look, poor set pieces is a tale as old as this club at this point. I can't remember the last time where that was a strength of
Mhm.
ours. Luis Alberto really great at a lot of things. Unfortunately, being the guy tapped to shoulder the responsibility on set pieces is just not one of his strengths. I will say he did to something he likes to do maybe far too often, to maybe the annoyance of fans and probably his teammates, is going direct on corners. Now he did almost
He
catch
did.
the keeper on one, but many times, to your point, we were very wasteful. There obviously were times where Lazzari's at the top of the box, and that's not the guy that you want to be there, to either deliver a strong ball or go for it. And a couple times, not even necessarily to to his discredit, because there weren't many options
Mhm.
for him to take. So at that point, you've just got to have a go. But just tactically having the wrong people in the wrong places on our set pieces, I thought for me, it was another match that was lost in the midfield. Our midfield, particularly in the first half, I did think it got a little bit better. I think Luis Alberto particularly grew into the match. Not his best, but I think he was a lot better in the second half than he was the first. I thought Cataldi had a stinker in the first 45. I thought he was pretty poor, a couple pretty poor turnovers. He had to take a foul on a turnover that would have been a dangerous
Mhm.
one for us to concede, because Genoa had numbers on the counter. And so, again, that midfield, particularly that regista, is so reliant on connecting passes
Mhm.
and controlling the flow of play. And I thought the midfield once again lost this match. That was really disappointing, considering this was the second one, and we talk about it feeling like preseason, but this is a second consecutive match for the same midfield,
Yeah.
hoping that we would see some continuity. And it just didn't feel like they were on the
Yeah.
same page. Again, a big disconnect, both defending, relying on your back four to do all the defending, and then just not really finding our attack in good positions.
Mm.
Um,
I will say,
you know,
since we're on the topic of midfield, I will say that I, I thought Kamada had a terrible like first 15 minutes, really bad. However, we actually got to see him, in my opinion, also grow into the game, and he had a lot more touches. He was a lot more. He was pretty much non-existent the first game. I can
yep,
maybe count on my hand the amount of times he touches, but Kamada was a lot more involved this game, which was encouraging to see. And in fact, the penalty that you think that could have been caught as a penalty, the second one, he's the one. It was a clever little touch in the box to release Sakani there, from Kamada that set that up. And then he had that incredible opportunity when he came across the box running in. Lazadi plays the ball to him, and the defender
yep.
makes a ridiculous block.
Yeah, he wins a corner on that. Great job by him. Great pass by Lazzari. I think it was the 46th
Yep.
minute. I agree. I think he definitely grew into it,
Mhm.
and not just when he had the ball on his feet, but I think he did a much better job of making those
Yeah,
runs into the box
100%.
and
He
threatening.
he was
So
much more aggressive today, which today was a lot more of, okay, this is the Kamada we know. This is the Kamada that I saw in Frankfurt, and hopefully it continues. But again, at what point does Asadi particularly start re-tinkering this midfield, especially at the six, at the reduced position? We have a great young player on the bench there that could alleviate that. So we'll
yeah,
see.
look, I told you before the match, I was hopeful that Kamala would get a start, but I was nervous that Sadi would revert back to something a little bit more
Mhm.
comfortable, seeing Vecino in there. You know, back-to-back losses against the likes of Lecce and Genoa. You have to see changes, I think, particularly given how poor that midfield has played in consecutive matches.
Mhm.
I would look, I'm not a betting man, but my goodness, I would bet on that midfield looking a lot different.
Hmm.
Because we've got Napoli, and you play like that and you give up the midfield that easily, it's going to be a nightmare
Question for
for
you.
us.
Real quick, touch on this. Who do you think should be starting? Who should be the midfield three in that game against Napoli?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. Given how, and look, I think Cataldi played a lot better, like most of the team did later in the first half and in the second half, but I thought he was quite poor. Um, I don't know that Rovella is ready, but look, he's a player that played really, really well in Serie A last
Mhm.
season. So for me, he's probably the first that I turn to, and if not him, I think you probably go with Vecino over Kamada
Mm. Oh wow.
to start that Napoli match, because we cannot start poorly. I think you have to go probably a little bit more reserved,
Mm.
and you've got to maintain possession. You got to be able to make some tackles, and you just can't let Napoli run ragged. So I worry that we can't afford 30 minutes to breathe into a match. So I would love to see Rovella in this one. It's also, to be honest, would be a really tough matchup to throw Rovella into. So that's where I lean a little bit with Vecino, knowing he has the experience for a big match like
I
that.
Yeah, I totally agree. I would. The football manager of me would say I'll throw in Ravella in football manager, not in real life, for the reasons that you said. And I would take out Alberto and put in Vecino. I I put
Okay.
it simply because, again, if you talk about defensive structure, defensive discipline, run back, Kamada does a lot more of that than Alberto does. If we can get both Vecino and Kamada running back, I think we could see something. And I thought Vecino was actually quite bright when he came in today. He made some really clutch sort of tackles in transition, um, made some good tackles, and I think that he could be handy against them.
So who you mentioned making some nice tackles. Who did you rate as our man of the match? Who was our best player over the course of the full 90 plus minutes?
Honestly, aside from the center backs, like Romagnoli, Casale had solid games. I actually have Lazari as our best player of the match.
Yeah.
I thought, and this will kind of lead to the Bedone of the match. Real quick, I actually thought Felipe was completely ineffective today. I mean, it was Lazari was our right winger today.
You and I have the exact same
That's
answer,
funny.
so I'm glad we're on the same page. And Lazzari, he tailed off in the second half to be expected. I think the amount of running he
Oh
did,
my
and
goodness.
he had to cover Felipe. He was absolutely gassed. But I think for me, it was not even a question for that first
Yeah,
half, because he was making
it was
runs. He made a
great.
couple really nice passes, couple great opportunities, and this is what you like to see from a
Mhm.
Lazzari. And defensively, he wasn't. Genoa never really threatened too
No.
much, so he wasn't necessarily in position to have to play, which is a perfect match for
Mhm.
Lazzari. And Felipe, absolutely invisible. I mean, the few opportunities that he attempted to take his man on, he was dispossessed, which put us in again a position of having to defend on transition. And it just I can't remember a moment that he was threatening, and obviously had to be subbed on. I was very happy with the substitutions by Sadi. Again, for me, they were
Yeah.
warranted. You take off Felipe Isaacson. Well, didn't necessarily do a ton or have a ton of opportunities. I thought he brought more of a spark than what Felipe did.
No,
Vecino was the
absolutely.
right sub at that point. Obviously, getting Tati on. Tati, had, again, not a ton of time, but had a couple headers. That very, very last play of the game in the 99th minute. My goodness, what a way to
Oh man.
start his career at Lazio. Should he, have maybe done a little bit better on that. But putting himself in the right position, and obviously not even necessarily us knowing the formation that we're playing, throwing in an extra attacker without a regista. So
But it looks like at least from I saw like the communication from Tati, and it looks like a 4-4-2. So we basically just go to like a 2 midfield pivot, and then we have 2 wide men and 2 strikers. And that's what it looks like, at least on the surface. Yeah, no, I that's funny we have the same ones. Yeah, Lazadi for me was our best overall player of the game for sure. A really bright spot today, and to kind of give, not that we're just hating on Felipe, because I want to also give some stats here. He had 0 successful dribbles out of 3 attempts. He had 0 accurate crosses out of 5 attempts. He's about 50% on long balls. Did nothing defensively. Nothing. He won 1 out of 8 duels on defense in general. It was about as bad as a performance you can get. I mean, it was really bad. And I will also say that he wasn't particularly good either last game as well. And one of the notes that I wrote here was wingers can't beat anyone 1v1 right now. This is something that I wrote, that I was particularly like, we get to the wingers and you expect these guys to make a move and dust these recently promoted side. Like, these are City B defenders, right? And so you expect our wingers to be able to beat these guys one-on-one. And to Isakson's credit, he did. In fact, Isakson had more successful take-ons dribbling in his short time than Felipe did in his time.
I will say, though, I think Zaccagni had a pretty solid match overall.
He had a better second half. I thought he was really bad the first half, but the second half,
yeah, I think second half. I mean, and look, he, as usual, he was one of the leading players last year in terms of how often he was fouled, and I think this match alone, 4 or 5 times that he was taken down. So continuing to put pressure, putting his head down, attempting to beat a man. I think he had a couple successful dribbles. Again, not his best match, but I thought overall he played a pretty solid match. There's just such a lack of balance where it's coming from that left side for us, not being able to really switch the play at all, knowing that Felipe was not doing a whole lot. I know last match you had Cheetah, you were pretty harsh on him. What'd you think of his match overall?
I thought today thankfully, a positive side was he didn't need to drop back as much today, which is a benefit that you don't want. You want Cheeto sitting around the box as much as possible, and he did that. And on the downside is he had that one good opportunity that it was difficult, but for more elite strikers, more of those top strikers, you expect them to get on target. You expect them to do something with it. It was tough.
I'm assuming you're talking about 65th minute.
Yes,
Cheeto has the ball coming to him. It's a little bit on the volley. Yes. He really, and look, you said it, it's difficult. Really, he had only one option. He's got a defender coming to him. He's got a big keeper right in front of him. He does extremely well to get it past them. He's got to kind of chip it over. But he hits the post. And, it's that right there is the story of his time on the national team. Kind of does a lot of things right and very unlucky. The margin to get that right, I think, is really, really slim. So I think, to his credit, that's a tough one to fit. There's not a lot of strikers because it was tough
for me. It wasn't. For me, the issue is we are not creating enough of those sort of chances for Cheeto. Cheeto right now is a victim, in my opinion. For me, he's a victim of everything happening behind him.
Yeah, and because he was a lot more active early in the match, the first half, even maybe the first 15 or so. But the end of the match, maybe the last 20 or so minutes, what was particularly disappointing, and again, more of a victim, he didn't factor at all. Right? Once Tati was on the pitch, he factored a lot more. than Cheeto. And so I don't know if he was tired and wasn't finding himself in position. It's just not necessarily the squad knowing how to play in that 4-4-2. But he didn't factor in. He didn't have opportunities. He didn't have a ball in dangerous places. You didn't see the classic Luis Alberto to Cheeto Immobile. I thought we tried to cross the ball way too many times in this match, which is not our forte at all, which was disappointing.
I also think too many times in the box, we get the ball in the box on the ground, and too many times they're just trying to do these 2 or 3 passes in the box. I would love to see a shot. Just Cheeto is an unselfish player. We know that. And I would love for him to see he had like a few touches in the box. Other players like Kanye had some touches in the box where I'm just saying take a touch and just shoot it, because you never know, you're going to get that same sort of rebound in our favor.
It's the story of my FIFA career. You want the elegant goal, you want the nice 1-2 passing. But again, Lazio needs to do a better job of taking a crack at it, and you hope that player isn't a Lazzari from outside of the box. So, but again, Genoa did really, really. I mean, they had all 10 men behind the ball, and so those passing lanes weren't there. Really, really. And early on, it was really sloppy. So it just took too long. We wasted 30, 40 minutes of a match.
Yep.
And then obviously had to chase it. So
you make it much simpler. The defensive strategy of Genoa completely shifts if they have a goal at hand, right? That's what we meant. For me, all things considered, everything aside, for me, the main issue is not starting out with the same urgency that we did start to play with the 40th minute. That was the first time I've seen that sort of urgency all season, period. It's a short season, but I didn't see that at all last game at all. But we need that from like the first minute. We need that immediately. And like you said it perfectly, preseason, like that still felt like our guys are floating around like, hey, like we're just getting ready for the season. It's just very complacent. And now they have the additional pressure of games such as Napoli, here, where now we have to get some sort of results because we've wasted the last 2. I mean, if we want to have any chance of staying in this competition for top 4, they have to come, and they have to come now. The results, every point matters.
So what's your positive? What are you taking away from this match? What's your positive outlook looking forward?
So my pros that I wrote here were we in terms of possession and movement, that was much better today. The movement from our Kamada was a big improvement in that aspect, but a movement from him, the movement from our wingers and behind, from Lazio as well. Remember we were talking last game that why weren't we just playing more wide balls to Lazio coming in as a release? We did that this time around. So I would say in terms of movement and connecting passes and possession, we were much better at that. Another positive was Kamada looks more comfortable. He looks a lot more comfortable than he did the first game. He was much more apparent in this match. And I said Isaacson does look bright, and I think that he does look quite threatening when he gets on, and when he touches the ball, he does seem to create stuff. And so those are my pros.
I think for me, it's less about this match and more about the next few, knowing that our strength of schedule is going to be really tough. We've got Napoli next, and they look really, really sharp. Followed up with an international break, which is going to be good for Lazio, considering all the signings, the lack of integrating them during a preseason. This very much does feel like a preseason. I'll also add that our chances of beating a giant always seem to be better than beating the likes of Lecce and Genoa. Yep. So, our record last year against the top 4, 5, 6 clubs in Serie A was really, really strong. We know this team always likes to get up for a big match. And last year, we were able to defeat this strong Napoli side. So, my hope is that this is the one. This is the match that wakes this team up,
Yeah.
that kicks off this campaign that we so excitedly prepared for, and every reason to be excited, about this, given some of the signings and finishing in second. But you know, knock on wood, this deal with Guendouzi comes to fruition, and we see him, at the medical center this week, and I think you and I both rate him very highly. And
Yeah.
we talked about the midfield struggling. He's a player that immediately will inject, and again, a little bit of an international break that hopefully, I'm not sure his status with the French national team. I know he was on their World Cup roster, but if he's got a break himself and he's able to stay back in Rome, that would be far more beneficial for everybody. So,
It'd be super ideal. Yeah.
yep. So, anything you want to get off your chest?
Nah, just bring it for Napoli, as you said. It would be, even just getting a draw, having a positive result could really kickstart the season. I think once we get those first points, I think once we get that first positive result, we'll continue to build on that. And it's a great feeling going to that international window with stealing a point from your opponent or getting all 3 points. And so you can't necessarily make up for these with that, but you can definitely make the fans proud and get that ball rolling with a good result against Napoli.
Yeah, it's a result is massive, particularly just to be able to take points away from Napoli at this
Exactly.
point. Obviously, we need them ourselves, but the Serie A campaign is already proving to be a wild one, and we're 2 match days into this thing. Juve dropping to Bologna, Fiorentina blowing a 2-goal lead to Lecce, which
Roma
makes us look a
losing.
little bit better. Roma losing. Makes it maybe all the more frustrating at the same time,
Yeah.
because these are opportunities for us to pad a little bit going into
Hmm.
a long season. So
Yeah,
we've said it
absolutely.
before, like, last thing we wanted to do, and we did it. We already tripped up. We tried to warn everybody and said, well, last season, 2 out of the 4 matches to start the campaign, we stumble, we blow those points. We were lucky that it didn't come back to bite us. But this year, given how tight it is expected to be,
Mm-hmm.
and here we are with an even worse start. So, I never want to just play on hyperbole and say there's absolutely zero scenario in which your 3rd match of the season is a must win, but those are the types of win that help define a season and kickstart it. So it's
Yeah.
absolutely massive for us. So yeah, we've got to come out and we've got to look good. And I'd love to see some of the new players factor in. I'd love to see Rovella in the 11, but if not in the 11, maybe come in and factor. So
Yeah.
yeah, let's hope that that the 3rd time we do this isn't as
The charm.
somber and we can
Third time's
celebrate.
the charm.
So, well, thank you, Laziali. Follow us on our socials. Hit us up on Twitter at Lazio World. We are on YouTube, and our audio podcasts also streaming wherever you listen to podcasts. So check us out. Give us a follow, subscribe, shoot us comments. And as always, sempre Forza Lazio.